In today's video, we're going to be talking about the upcoming pattern. We do have a high chance of tropical development in the month of June, which is pretty unusual. We're going to be talking about that. We have a second threat off the southeast coast that we're going to be talking about, as well as a massive heat wave that is on the way for this upcoming week. And then another one in the long range, perhaps, as we approach the month of July, looking likely, and that one could be even worse. So, we're going to be talking about all of those things among other storms around the nation. It should be a very, very exciting one. You may have noticed I brought back the face cam. I feel like it inspires me to put more effort into the editing, and I also think that it just brings in more views. For some reason, it just creates a different level of engagement. I don't know why. To a lot of you, it makes no sense, and even to me, I don't really understand why it would make a huge difference, but for some reason, it just does. So that is what it is. We're going to be doing it anyway. Let's take a look at tomorrow afternoon. I hope everybody had a wonderful Father's Day, by the way. I did, for sure, with my dad. It was great. Let's talk about tomorrow, though, and what we see is a 1,004 millibar low pressure center over Minnesota. So we have this low pressure system, some storminess around it overall, I would say, for areas in South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, overall kind of your Great Lakes and upper Midwest, northern plains area here. Underneath this low, we do see that there's a bit of a cold dip, right? So we have this kind of cold air moving in behind, and then you have this warm air surging out ahead of this low, which is very, very typical. And what this is doing is allowing for a lot of thunderstorms to spread into this, especially Gulf Coast area. So along Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida Panhandle as well, up through Arkansas, even up into the Ohio Valley and Midwest, like Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee there, even portions of the Appalachian Mountain Range as well. So we're getting this interesting spread of thunderstorms for tomorrow in these areas. We also have a 988 millibar low pressure center here over Wyoming, and this is allowing for quite a bit of snowfall over Idaho and Montana, and then some pretty widespread rainfall throughout Washington, Oregon, other areas of Idaho and Montana, and then Wyoming. Very interesting for the mid to late portion of June, but here we are. Tuesday on June 18th, we do see some low pressure here in the southern area of the Gulf of Mexico. This is the primary region we're going to be watching for tropical development, so we're going to keep a really close eye here. We do have some isolated and scattered about thunderstorm activity happening around the nation, but nothing too major to discuss for Tuesday on the 18th. Wednesday on the 19th, we do see this low is still relatively weak in the Gulf, but we have heavy precipitation associated with it. This kind of brings me back to a note that I was making in the videos pretty frequently about a month ago, where I was talking about how, you might have a weaker low. That doesn't mean weaker impacts always. They do happen to loosely correlate, obviously. When you have a strong low pressure system, you do expect more major impacts as opposed to a weaker low pressure system, but that doesn't mean it's always the case. We've seen very weak lows feature major impacts, and we've seen very strong lows feature not so many impacts whatsoever. So yes, they're loosely correlated, but it doesn't always have to be the case. So in this case, I think we could feature some major flooding and some significant wind without there being a super major low pressure system there. We even dropped to 1,004 here by the time it's making impact in Mexico. But again, very widespread heavy precipitation for northern Mexico and southern Texas could spell some pretty nasty impacts. Also, this is almost, I would say, three and a half, 4 days out for northern Mexico. This could trend northward and impact Texas a little bit more. So for our United States friends here, this definitely could pose more impacts later on. But I will say that even with just this, you could expect some pretty heavy rainfall again for southern Texas. But again, if we see any northern trends, those impacts could also trend in the wrong direction. Again, another quieter day here on Thursday the 20th. Let's just move towards Friday on the 21st, and we start to get a little bit more activity here. We have a weaker low here for Colorado. Again, weaker low doesn't mean weak impacts, but in this case, we have some showers along the Rocky Mountain Range, maybe some warm front type impacts here for the northern plains, upper Midwest, Great Lakes. This could feature some heavy rainfall I'm not expecting too much in the way of massive thunderstorms with this, but there could be some lower tier threats of severe weather, which we certainly will want to take seriously, especially for South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, kind of your northern tornado alley here. And that even extends up into Canada with some tornadic activity from time to time. So definitely want to take that pretty seriously still. And we do see some thunderstorms / showers going on here for the northeast as well by Friday on the 21st. And then kind of for your Gulf and southeast coasts here is the day where we have some isolated and scattered about thunderstorm activity just kind of going on through the day. Pretty common this time of year. For Saturday on the 22nd here, we do see that this northern area, again, is kind of the highlight here for the thunderstorms and showers. We once again see some of this deeper south stuff ongoing as well. Not too major, but look at this. Keep in mind the Gulf of Mexico is just seeing major activity here as far as just the amount of thunderstorms and just overall tropical moisture that we have sitting tight in this area. Definitely something to keep an eye on. That's how all of this activity started. If you guys have been keeping up with the videos for the last few weeks, we were talking about tropical activities probably like a week or more before we ever got any threats from the National Hurricane Center. So we were kind of able to see this on the model guidance in the long range, like, hey, there's a ton of activity here in the Gulf. This could just spit something out, and that's kind of how all of this started. So seeing these abnormal amounts of moisture is a good sign that some tropical systems could begin to develop. So, this little round of 2 systems that we have right now might not be the end of it even for June. So certainly something to watch for. Sunday the 23rd, we do see a low here over Michigan. Some thunderstorms and showers ongoing from the Great Lakes eastward into the northeast here. Also extending from the Great Lakes southward through into the plains and eventually the southwest here. We do see a little bit of storminess as well for the Pacific Northwest. And then again, along those Gulf states, seeing some of this tropical moisture come onshore, not really as a tropical system, but just overall thunderstorm activity, humidity, heat. That's what you can expect from this. Monday, we see this spreading more up and down the coast. Monday the 24th, that is. We have a 999 up there near the Adirondack Mountains. And overall, just a lot of thunderstorms up and down the eastern seaboard for this date. We do have a 999 as well. Again, another one for South Dakota and Nebraska. 997 up here in Alberta to the north. And this kind of sets up a very interesting pattern. We have a lot of cold air diving to the west of that stronger low up there in the northwest. And then we have a little bit of kind of like a ridge going on just to the north of this secondary low. And this creates some pretty interesting boundaries in here. I could see some severe weather along this line here as we have just the rising warm air in there. Some cold air trying to intrude from the west. That could set up pretty nicely for the plains once again. Monday on the 24th, something to watch. Not a super lock with that. There is a lot that can change in this amount of time, but does look pretty interesting. Tuesday the 25th as well, we see all of this spread eastward. I think a lot of this activity could feature some severe weather. And again, southeast seeing quite a bit of thunderstorm activity for the second or third day in a row here. And then here's Wednesday the 26th. We see a lot of this kind of plains activity is continuing to spread eastward, which could continue on that severe weather spree if we see it start in the first place. Obviously, time will tell. Southeast, if you're very close to the coast, may still be seeing some thunderstorm activity there, again on Wednesday the 26th. Let's take a look at the total precipitation, and we can see that a lot of these areas are getting dodged by any above average activity, starting from the southwest, which is obvious, the Four Corner states, some of the southern plains, into some of the deeper south, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, some of the southeast as well, just seeing very dry conditions for a 10-day period during June. So below average activity for a lot of these areas that I've circled in here over the next 10 days is being indicated by this European model. We do see above average activity, however, for a lot of your northern plains, your upper Midwest, especially here, your northern Great Lakes, and then for the northern Northeast as well. So very close to that Canadian border, we're seeing a lot of above average activity. And then again to the south as well, it's split like the Red Sea here. We see a lot of Texas, the Gulf Coast here, seeing a ton of activity. Again, all this tropical moisture trying to move in, definitely playing a role in that. But it's interesting to see this area kind of just split down the middle where there's a whole lot of nothing going on in here. Not to say that there's literally nothing, but comparatively to your north and your south, is far below average activity as far as what we expect for this time of year as is. Now, for the temperature pattern, again, there's a lot to discuss here because we're talking about the storms, tropical activity, and then we also just have that heat wave on the way. So we're a little cooler than normal, believe it or not, right now. for a lot of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. It is hot, but we're slightly below normal as far as your kind of like historical norms. But as we move towards, especially like Monday here, we're seeing a lot of heat, especially in the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, and Northeast, as well as some of the Mid-Atlantic. So that's day one there. Let's take this towards Tuesday. Again, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast here. This corridor seeing very, very hot conditions for Tuesday. That's day two. Wednesday, we're seeing the third day in a row where these areas are seeing substantially hot temperatures compared to normal. 3 days in a row above 90 would be what would take us into kind of that official heat wave status. Thursday, June 20th, might be our fourth day for a lot of folks in here, as we're seeing another day of continued heat. And then we're seeing Friday, Saturday, still very hot. And that kind of just continues. It's not quite as bad anymore, but it is still there. We do get a little bit of a cool down for the Thursday, the 27th time frame. That is very far out, so take it with a grain of salt. But this model is indicating that it could cool down for a little bit. But look at the very long range estimates here. This is for Monday on July 1st. Look at this crazy amount of heat here for these areas in the plains, the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes, the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast. This would be actually quite more substantial than that first one that we're seeing very soon. This could be featuring a lot of upper 90s into the hundreds. This would be a very dangerous heat wave here if this model is correct. And kind of a fun fact, it doesn't really play too much of a role into much of anything, but I do recall that last year, the kind of like the July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th time frame, it might not have been all those days, but I believe it was extremely hot. At least here in Virginia, I remember it being like upper 90s, and it made it very hard to want to go out and do anything on the 4th of July time. So let me know if you remember that in the comments down below, but I believe we did have a heat wave in the very beginning of July, just like this last year, so that could be interesting. Let's take a look at the Storm Prediction Center outlook. We will look at the National Hurricane Center outlooks after this, so stay tuned for that if you're curious about the tropical activity. But we do see for the day one outlook, we have these lighter green areas. This is your general thunderstorm risk areas where we expect general thunderstorms, but anything is possible, so be sure to heed every watch, warning, and advisory. We do have the darker green areas here, which is your level 1 marginal risk. We do expect isolated severe weather to occur in these areas. And then we have 2 yellow areas here, mostly in the northern plains and upper Midwest. These are your level 2 slight risk areas where we expect scattered bout severe weather to occur. For day 2, that's for today on Sunday, by the way. For day 2 on Monday, June 17th here, we again have the general thunderstorm risk area, marginal risk area, and another slight risk area once again in the upper Midwest and northern plains. And then for day 3 on Tuesday, June 18th, not moving around too much. We have 2 general thunderstorm risk areas, another marginal risk for the plains and Midwest, and then for the upper Midwest, once again, a level 2 slight risk. So we're getting that yellow area up there for the 3rd day in a row. So it's very typical for the northern plains, upper Midwest to see kind of some severe weather this time of year. June, July, August is usually when we see a lot of that up there in the northern areas. And sure enough, we're kind of following those historical norms with this, so not too surprising whatsoever. Let's go ahead and move into the National Hurricane Center stuff, because this is going to get very interesting. As we take a look, we see that on our 2-day graphical tropical weather outlook, which by the way, there's a 7-day one, which we'll take a look at in a minute, which is where it gets really interesting. But for the day 2 outlook, we already have a 30% chance of this system developing. It's currently over the Yucatan Peninsula, but it is expected to move into the southern Gulf here, where it should develop further. So let's just dive straight into the 7-day outlook, and here we go. We currently have a high-risk red, code red here in the Gulf of Mexico. I can't remember the last time we had a code red in June. That's absolutely crazy. But we currently have a 70% chance of development here. So definitely a very high chance of seeing this system develop in the southern Gulf of Mexico off the Yucatan Peninsula. Again, perhaps we can't rule out a southern Texas impact. If not, a northern Mexico impact would be expected. We also, on the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook, pick up another area off the east coast of Florida here, where over the next 48 hours, we obviously have a 0% chance of seeing this one develop. It's not even there yet. But over the next 7 days, we do have a 30% chance of development, and they all kind of start out low like this, so I'm going to be curious to track it. Could increase over time, and we could actually see one from this as well, which would be heading kind of towards the southeast coast of the United States. Very, very interesting. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe, as we do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.